Today, I have the honor of having a dear soul sister of mine, a woman who has been just so near and dear in my life and has been such a supportive person in my world. And I'm really just grateful and excited that we get to have this conversation and that my community gets to meet you. So, welcome to the show, Damkianna.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to chat with you. I love your podcast. I love everything that you are creating in the world. So it's definitely an honor to dive deep with you here today.
Thank you so much. And I'd love to start by us just sharing about how we met and what that experience was like. It was pretty magical for me, and I'll share a little bit of context and then you can share about your experience. So, we had seen each other a few times locally here in Asheville. We've crossed paths several times, but when we actually truly met was at a clothing swap that one of our dear friends, Betsy, hosts. And before I went to the clothing swap, I got this inspiration to grab a copy of my book, The Feminine Way. And I was like, maybe I can gift this to someone at the circle. Like, I feel like someone needs this right now. Like, it would be something that I would love to just gift. So I'm like running out the door. I grab my book. I show up at this gathering, and I think you were one of the first people that I dropped in and said hello to. And during our opening circle, I shared that I had the book, and you ended up receiving the book, and it was meant to go to you. So that was really special. And you shared about why it was so meaningful for you at that time. And so I'd love for you to share that here.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was really fun to reconnect with you there and to get to dive deeper with you. And, that space was created as an intentional clothing swap. So I just want to shout out gratitude to women who create those intentional spaces for women to gather and support each other. And that's what ended up happening for you and I is when you said, okay, I have this book, it's called The Feminine Way. And I was just feeling your energy. And I just was like, that is literally for me. I know this is a sign for me from the universe that is really supportive on what I'm discovering about myself and healing within myself right now. And so, yeah, it was really fun just to be like, I literally know that's for me. And I also just love you following your intuition. Like you're about to head out the door and you have that hit of intuition, and that really blossomed this beautiful connection between us. And I got to dive into your book and read your story and really just tap into, yeah, how powerful tapping in with our feminine really is.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. And before you received the book and like at that point in your journey, what were maybe some of like the resistances or the misconceptions that you had about connecting with your feminine energy?
Yeah, that's a really potent journey because I'll jump back to kind of share a bit more about my earlier years. I grew up super Christian, I would say fundamentalist Christian in the Bible Belt. And my perception of being feminine was directly linked to giving my power away. Like I felt there was this imprint within me that to be feminine means I have to submit to a man, I have to serve a man, I have to, like, my greatest accomplishment would be to grow up, get married, have a family. And I've always been kind of the rebel. I've always been one to question and go my own unique path. And so I did really kick back against that as I got older. And I would say even in my early 20s, really identifying as queer and as pansexual and feeling very feminine, but also at the same time kind of rejecting my femininity. And while those pieces of me, being queer, being pan, are authentic, there was a layer, there was like a shell around me that I had kind of developed to protect myself from being hurt by the masculine, from having to give my power away. And yet, the ironic thing is, because I was blocking myself from really understanding my feminine power, I shut myself off from so much of what could be possible. And I think I would say that I'm also a mother. I have a 12, almost 13-year-old son. And childbirth for me, I did a home natural childbirth. And for me, that was the first moment in my life where I did connect with the feminine in a really powerful way, where I felt the true divine feminine life force come and visit me in the hardest moment of labor and say, I'm here to teach you, like, let me take over. And in that moment, that was my first introduction to, okay, the feminine is actually the full power of life and death. And so, it was a journey for me to learn how to connect with that and integrate that. And yeah, meeting you and your book was such a reflection of me saying to the universe, okay, I'm ready to let go of some of these shells of protection that I've built around my feminine so that I can actually have space for this empress energy to start blossoming.
Hmm. Yeah, I got chills when you were talking about connecting with the divine feminine while you were giving birth. I mean,
Whew,
what a portal and like opportunity to surrender, right? To
literally,
let go of control, like there's no other choice,
no
really.
choice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing about that layer of protection, which I know so many women resonate with and have associated, the misunderstanding that the feminine means that we're weak, that we're not in our power, that we're giving up control. And if we're really looking at divine, powerful, embodied women, it's the opposite of that is what we've discovered, right?
Truly, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And when I think about our friendship, I think about it as like this like blossoming flower. We really started to connect and we are two very different beings and we're very unique in our expressions and we play in different worlds. But something that I really, really appreciate about you and that I value is the way that you show up in sisterhood. And
Mm.
when I met you, it was at a time where I was really evaluating my friendships. And I was really taking a look at, okay, what are my needs in sisterhood? Because there were some connections at that time where I noticed that I was experiencing like some anxious attachment. I noticed that I was feeling unmet in certain ways where maybe I was putting in more energy or more thoughtfulness. I was always initiating
Mhm.
and or like I felt like I was holding in my relationships or having to hold space for my friends, and it didn't feel how I wanted it to feel. And so it was in this exploration of, okay, what are the types of friendships that I do want to call in? And seriously, the way that you've showed up in sisterhood is exactly how I want to feel in my friendships. I want to feel like I'm connecting with women who are in their power, who are following their passions, who are doing their own inner work. Like I have seen you over and over and over again, like rewrite the stories and the narratives of your past and like step into this new evolution of yourself that keeps continuing to expand and become like it's been really beautiful to witness that. And then like feeling inspired by how you show up in your life and then also feeling inspired by how you show up in sisterhood, which with so much care, so much thoughtfulness and so much consistency, right? And I think
Mm.
that we do share that need and that desire for connection, right? And
Definitely.
authentic connection.
Definitely. Yeah. And, celebrating you for your clarity. Like, it was really beautiful as we were getting to know each other for you to really share that process that you were in and the clarity you were coming to of these qualities are what I value and these are my standards for friendship. And for you to name that so clearly and for us to, yeah, get to celebrate that, hey, because I chose this within myself, look, the universe has brought this other being, it's that quality of magnetism of now our frequencies are matching. And so it is so fun to experience that. And, while sometimes it can be discouraging to go through those experiences of okay, this friendship or this relationship is not aligned, even though I want it to be, choosing to really let go and say, okay, well, what am I learning from this? And how can I open to what I do really want to receive? I think that is also a very feminine quality, to really be in surrender and to not try to control an outcome or say, well, this person is so cool, and if I keep trying, then eventually our friendship will blossom. And it's like, no, girl, like, go where the magnetism is and go where you're really valued. And also just recognizing that that really comes from me valuing myself and
Hmm.
me connecting more deeply with myself. And then I'm able to let go of those relationships that aren't really meeting me there. And so, yeah, it
Hmm.
was super special to get to experience this sisterhood with you as well. And I would say, in my past, I've actually felt really uncomfortable in women's circles. And I think I actually shared that at the intentional clothing swap we were at, um, to really, I felt so dissonant with a collective of women because I didn't feel like all parts of me could be seen. But it's such a projection. It's like, was I really allowing all parts of me to coexist? And so, yeah, it's been really beautiful to get to experience a deep sisterhood without having that internal cringe of like, oh, that's such a like sisterhood, like that's so hippie, or that's so, whatever judgments I was having. It's been really awesome to get to also receive all of the deep love and care. Like, you track my, like, where are you on your cycle and your emotions, and we track each other's business evolutions, and it's so fun. I love
It
getting to
is so
journey with
fun.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we play in a lot of different dimensions too. Like there's a lot of different spaces that we, have alignment in. And it's so fun to get to talk about all of those different layers and celebrate each other and support each other. And yeah, it's super beautiful. So
Definitely.
one of the things that I really admire about you is the deep work that you do with yourself. And I know that when we first met, you were coming back to some practices that maybe you used to do and
Hmm.
had kind of maybe let go a little bit, which happens to all of us,
Yeah.
right? And then you came back to that, and I just saw you coming back so deeply into your power. So I'd love for you to talk about your morning practice, and I know that you teach this with your clients as well. You have a very specific process. So share a little bit about like what your morning practice is and why that's so important to you.
Absolutely. Well, I love that invitation, and I'm gonna reveal even more and like remove the veil on like the personal journey, because when you and I started getting to know each other, I was in a partnership, in a relationship, and I noticed every time you and I hung out, and I would be sharing about all these things that weren't working in that relationship. And I started to notice, okay, every time I'm hanging out with Amy, I'm talking about all the things that are not working in this
Mm,
relationship. And I started to, first of all, just think, well, I know the trajectory of Amy is committed to her alignment. And I'm getting to see this mirror of how I'm outside of my alignment. And while I value that Amy is able to be present and listen and support, I also saw you were such a reflection for me.
mm,
And I know this will come full circle to your question, but essentially, yeah, I was in this place where I had called in a relationship, and it was so many things that I wanted. And I then began to lose myself in that relationship. And I had so much to learn about what programming was still running in my mind, in my nervous system, that led to me doing that. And so as I began really seeing, every time you and I hung out, I'm like, damn, I'm talking about this relationship again and how the same problems are happening. And what am I going to do about it? Am I just going to keep doing this, or am I going to tap into my alignment? And so my morning practice is what has been one of the most powerful things that causes transformation for me, because it is that choice every single morning to tap into my higher spiritual perspective, to connect with my body, and to really focus my mind on what I'm creating. So I, created a system that I call the MVP morning practice, and it stands for Magnetic Visionary Powerhouse, because I really geek out on the science of spirituality and recognizing that first and foremost, I'll zoom out and say, I noticed when I would wake up every morning, I would think, oh my God, I don't want to get up. And I'm thinking about my to-do list and I'm wanting to press snooze. And I thought, wow, the fact that I wake up every morning that way, that's just not how I want to be living life. So for me, the MVP morning practice starts with my very first thoughts. And I shifted into, okay, wow, actually, what I'm going to say is before my eyes open, before my feet hit the ground, I am so grateful to be present here right now. And I breathe the fullness of my spirit into every cell of my body. And that for me was just like such a major game changer. And then from there, basically, I do something to connect with mind, body, and spirit. And so I like to sit at my altar and I have a list of affirmations that I read through after doing this one really simple breathing practice. It's called the full breath technique. It's actually a yogic breathing practice that actually works on really stretching and expanding and activating all of your lungs, like the lower, the middle, and the upper lungs. So for me, it's literally, if I do that breath like 3 times, that takes a couple minutes. And then I read through my affirmations while doing that breathing practice. And then I have my yoga mat right there. I'll do some stretching or, just I'll dance, whatever it is that helps me just connect the mind, body, and spirit. And so, literally, if I just do this 10 minutes every day, it doesn't have to be 30 minutes, doesn't have to be an hour. Sometimes it's longer, but also I'm a mom. So, I try to get up a little bit early so I can do this practice. And then, what is the most notable for me is that when I don't do it, I swear there's always a moment later in the day where I'm like, fuck, I really could have handled that better. Or if I was more resourced, if I had really taken the time to ground myself and connect with my higher perspective, with my more expansive, relaxed nervous system and mindset, I would have handled that differently. And so I just see how much it expands my resource. And it's so fun. It's so fun to see the transformation that can happen from just committing to 10 minutes every morning. And yeah, I remember restarting my commitment to my morning practice. And over weeks and months, you were like, okay, I see a total change. Like life is popping off. And yeah, so it was really, really fun to have that reflection too from you.
Mm, so much there. And I mean, it's so relatable, that feeling of waking up in the morning and being like, I don't want to do today. I have to do this. And
Mm.
it really is a conscious choice to shift into a space of alignment, to shift into a space of connection with your higher self, to decide how you want your day to go. And I love that you talked about the nervous system piece. It's something that I was speaking out about last night when I was teaching it in my intimate program, where I was talking about, yeah, expanding your nervous system capacity, becoming a more resourced human, and that impacting the way that we respond to triggers, we respond to conflict, we respond to challenges that inevitably are going to come up throughout the day. So, yeah, I love this connection. I mean, you and I geek out a lot. I also am really into the science and the woo, but something that I also really love about both of us is that we're very grounded in it, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, let's get into alignment. And then what are we going to create in the world? Like
Yes.
taking that inspired action. And so I know that's a lot of what you support your clients with, is living on purpose, is creating a life of fulfillment and of meaning. And I know, just because I know you personally, that it wasn't always that way for you, right? There, you didn't have that confidence or that direction specifically before. So take us back to when you were a performer. I know that you still, do ceremonial performances and you share your voice and you create experiences for people, and I'd love for you to share like the beginning stages of who you were when you started that journey of self-expression and letting yourself be seen in your art and your magic.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's go on a journey. So, as young me, I was always the artist type. I loved getting dressed up. I put on shows for my family all the time. And I was very playful and just there was magnetism, just natural magnetism. And I would change my outfits like 5 times a day. It was just like, that was me. And I also started training with a classical vocal instructor when I was 7. And they realized, like, wow, you have an insane range, like a 3, 4 octave range at that age. And so I started learning how to cultivate my voice, learning how to, properly sing from a young age. And so I would sing at church and sing at events. And I was so paralyzed by fear, like my heart pounding, like probably at the verge of a panic attack. And I, of course, didn't have that language back then, but sometimes I would even back out of doing a performance because I just was so debilitated by these overwhelming emotions and this pressure. And, the times that I did push through it, which were many times, the impact was beautiful and people, there would always be positive reflections, but that didn't fix my own self pressure that was happening. And this, honestly, this appeared in many different areas of my life. I also competed with horse training and horse competitions, and the same thing would happen. I'd go into the competition, I'd win the class, but afterwards I would go and just cry and beat myself up over one mistake that I made. And so there was just this deep perfectionism that was so crippling for me. And, through the years, I actually stopped singing. It was so debilitating. And for me, what really started unlocking that, I would say, honestly, fast forward to my son was maybe 2 years old. And so I'm in my early 20s. I'm not singing, I'm not performing, I'm not competing. Like, I'm just living life. Um, Living life as a single mom. And just, I remember sitting, looking out the window, sitting on a couch, and just thinking, this world is so overwhelmingly chaotic. There's so much negative and harmful things happening 24/7. And how can I even make a measurable impact? And so I was starting to kind of get into that, like, what the fuck is the purpose of being here? And honestly, that question is what began to open everything up for me and change everything for me. Because essentially, I went on a deep journey. And for me, it was a deep initiation where I really went to a hillside amongst some pine trees and some English ivy. And I was like, universe, I am not getting up from here until you tell me exactly why the fuck I'm on this planet. And because for me, also, I was like, how am I going to raise my child if I don't even know why I'm here? And how am I going to wake up every day and live this life in a positive way when there's so much chaos going on? And I've always been hypersensitive. I would say I really have been very leaning towards psychic from a young age. Like, I can see and feel people's thoughts and energies. And so, there's a lot of energy on this planet. So, how can I better navigate my own energy was really my question. And so, for me, I went through this deep initiation where I had these multidimensional experiences. And that's something that I share about in my course, Cosmic Roots, because for me, it was realizing, okay, my energy, who I am as a human being, every cell in my body is made up of atoms. atoms are literally just pure energy and empty space. And so once I started connecting all of these mystic studies and quantum science, and from a young age, I had really worked with Olympic level mindset training, like visualization and focus. I began to see all those worlds coming together and realize that first and foremost, I have to connect with why I'm here. And that is what has let all of the pressure fall away. And so for me, what I realized through my initiation, which is such a fun story for another time, is that I'm here to contribute to harmony on this planet. And how do I do that? I actually do that by cultivating harmony within myself. So, what does it look like to tap into my power in every moment? And so that's where I started learning about how to align my chakras, how to work with my energy field, how to, there's a lot of mystic texts about lucid dreaming and transcendental meditation, and essentially how to tap into your higher spirit perspective and be able to zoom out very intentionally and see a situation with a higher perspective rather than being so locked in and saying, well, I'm in this body and I'm having this reaction, like you're describing. How do you create more space in your nervous system? For me, it's a combination. Yes, you have to do the somatic work and the emotional work to get to know all of your system and your emotions and your past traumas and integrate all those things. And that is only going to get you so far. You have to also, for me, be able to tap into, oh, my energy that makes up my body is actually ancient. I'll sprinkle one more little thing in that I do geek out about, which is that when I began to study this, I saw that all ancient cultures have stories and lore and mythos about how we came from the stars and that these beings came to Earth and taught us and evolved us. And so I just find that fascinating that every ancient indigenous culture is connected to something beyond just this planet and energies that go beyond just the day to day. And so for me, it's all about bridging those worlds, the ancient, timeless, cosmic, divine creators that we are with the everyday, practical, human animal selves that we also are. And so to answer fully your question, that really peeled back those layers of perfectionism for me, because instead of being like, oh my God, I have to get this right, it's like, oh, I trust something so much bigger than myself, and I'm actually connected to something bigger. So if I just relax into that, and I think that's also been a big part of the feminine reconnection, if I can relax into and open to this power that I'm a part of, this ecosystem, then everything becomes easier. And so, yeah, now I can get up on a stage or even, something like this conversation with you. I probably in the past would have been so anxious about it. And I've just been vibing today. And so it's so much more fun feeling connected to something bigger than myself. And it makes things easier and more fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I'm hearing too is that when we're in the ego mind and when we're in the insecurities and the self-doubt and the perfectionism, and we're not connected to something greater or to our spirit or to our soul, that it stops us from sharing our gifts. And that when we do the deeper work to explore who we are and what our greater purpose is, and that we let go of this idea like that we're the ones who are technically in control, but like really open to that greater trust and that greater guidance, then it becomes less about me and more about how can I serve? How can I give? How can me being in my authentic expression create a positive impact in the world around me, whether that in your case is through singing or through mentorship, or, for some people, it might be through writing or through beautiful images and photography or making art. Like there's so many different ways that we can show up in our self-expression, and it requires us to get out of our own way. And I love hearing even bits of your journey of the deep initiation that you had to go through to really work through not having that ego mind be in the driver's seat, which is, what was stopping you from being able to feel confident and to be able to express yourself in the way that you do now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as you're naming some of those, reflecting some of that back, I'm also thinking of, we in school and in religion and often in family environments, it's with the best intentions to educate us and to mold us into good human beings, but often we get disconnected from understanding our true connection. And so, I love that we're in a time period where coaching and mentorship has really blown up, because I think people are ready for education and initiation and intentional activations that we've missed out on in traditional education, in traditional religion. So, yeah, just celebrating that we're in an era where people are able to access more support to go on their own unique journey, because, it's not a cookie cutter journey. It's not open this book and follow these rules and this is going to guide you to perfection. There's so many different ways that each of us wake up to our purpose and our most authentic path.
Hmm. Yeah, and I know that is something that you support your clients with, is aligning with their soul calling, aligning with their purpose. And something that I love that you talk about is the difference between success and fulfillment, where it's like we have the traditional model of success that we all know what that looks like. It's based on certain metrics, it's based on how it looks on the outside. And then we have so many people who are in that position and or struggling to strive for that position, and they're feeling unfulfilled and they're feeling unhappy. So there's something missing in that picture. And I heard something the other day that I really loved, which is like from Tony Robbins, that he talks about that we've really in the Western world mastered the science of achievement, but we're really lacking in the art of fulfillment.
Oh, that's such a good
Like,
quote. I love that.
that's
We need to
it
make
right
t-shirts.
there. Yes, I know, I know. And it's so true. And it's really, what I see you doing is helping people to reconnect with that inner purpose, that inner fulfillment, so that they can create contribution to the world, so that they can live on purpose and live in alignment and create a positive impact in the world in their unique ways. And I just love that about your work. And so I know that you work with a lot of visionary leaders, and I'd love for you to explain, like, what is visionary leadership and why is it so important right now?
Absolutely. I love geeking out with visionary leaders. And I would say that honestly, some people who are visionary leaders don't even know that they are. So, yes, let's break it down. For me, a visionary is simply someone who sees another possibility. So, I mean, that could be widely applied to many people. So, if you look around at the world and you see, oh, this could be better or this could be different, then you are a visionary. And, that can be all the way to someone who is a mother or a father who looks at their upbringing and they say, okay, I want to do something different. To me, that's a visionary. That's someone who is holding a vision that they've not yet experienced. And they're saying, I'm going to choose to create this. And so to go from being a visionary to being a visionary leader, that's a beautiful bridge to build. And that comes from a personal commitment to say, hey, I actually believe that I have the power to create this. So I see the vision and I am going to embark on this mission to create that. And so, a leader can look like a business owner. A leader can, again, look like a mother or a father. You can also be an employee and be a visionary leader. And so, really, yeah, if you see something that could be different that you want to create in the world and you are leading into creating that, you're a visionary leader.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that definition. And what are some of the blocks that you see or the things that keep people stuck from being a visionary, seeing possibility, but then actually going out and creating that and embodying that leadership in the world?
Yeah, I think the biggest one that comes to mind is comfort, is the comfort of what we've known. Like there's a safety in, okay, I see this vision and I see what's possible and I feel drawn in that direction, but there's a sense of safety in the life that I know. And so I would say that's one of the biggest blocks. And, you know, that challenge is going to be there in many areas, even if it's just, okay, I want to get to this level of health and fitness, but the comfort of sleeping in or the comfort of not carving out time to tap into the body, you know, we're all drawn towards comfort. And so that's, I would say, one of the biggest ones. Let me contemplate what other blocks come up for people. I would say family imprinting and expectations. I think that's a really big one, to realize that it is really challenging to go against what has been imprinted in your nervous system. So if you've been imprinted with, you grow up, you go to school, you prove your worth by having this successful job. Meanwhile, your soul is suffering. You are depressed. You don't feel fulfilled. You escape from your job on the weekends. You know, there's a deeper purpose that that individual has that can get really buried beneath the external pressures and the imprinting from family. So that's definitely, yeah, I would say comfort and external imprints that we really have to choose to go deep and say, okay, I'm going to look at the root of these. I'm going to learn practices that help me feel safe to expand into this vision of how I really want my life to be. And, I think that is one of the most notable qualities of a good leader is you've done the work to show up and blaze a trail regardless of the challenges and the chaos and the things that try to weigh you down. And it does take support, it does take learning different tools and practices, because growing and developing, it's a constant process. It's never, you never arrive. I remember, with some of my horse trainers that I grew up with, first of all, my horse trainer always had a trainer and their trainer had a trainer. And so there was this, as a 17-year-old, I'm thinking, when do I finally arrive? I take all these lessons every week and like, when do I arrive? And my coach, who was studying kinesiology and sports psychology, and she's where I learned a lot of the Olympic mindset training. She was like, my coach is in his 70s. And every competition, he goes and he stands in the warm up ring where all the coaches are coaching their students, and he watches and he listens, because we're always learning. So that's another thing I would say, just that I remind myself of. And that's also helped with the perfectionism too, is to let go and say, I'm always going to be learning. For me to continue stepping in as a visionary leader and creating what I want to see in the world, I'm going to continue to bump up against my own blockages. And that's not a sign to stop. It's not a sign that I've failed. It's a sign that I'm willing to grow. And so yeah, having the tools and the support in those moments is so key.
Hmm. Yeah, there's so many things coming through for me in this realm of like the ongoing student and ongoing learning. And I was thinking this morning of, it does feel like this quality of the feminine of craving more and just like knowing that we are ever evolving, we are infinite, and that when we are tapped into that, knowing like, of course, we're going to want to get to the next level of our growth and of our evolution, but we want to make sure we're not doing that from the place of like, oh, I need to fix myself or I need to prove myself. So, yeah, I think that's an important piece there. And I want to come back to some of the blocks that I see. Like, one of the biggest blocks that I see for for visionary leaders and, the women that I work with is the fear of judgment, the fear of being seen, the fear
Mm.
of not fitting in. And oftentimes that is fear of being judged by their family of origin for being different, or by their current peer group, or people from the past. And that is something that's really huge that we need to work through is, really looking at, okay, I am a unique being and I am different, and that's not a bad thing. And that what I want to create is different than the status quo. It's different than what everyone else is creating. And I don't want to live in that box. So it takes a lot of courage to really lean in and blaze your own trail and, follow your own path and express yourself differently than what was considered normal when you grew up, and allowing yourself to be seen, like really putting yourself out there and sharing your mission with the world. Like it's huge.
Definitely. Yeah, and coming from growing up in a very Southern Christian home, and then fast forward to now, I have face tattoos. I've had very extreme different hairstyles. I've learned how to just wake up every day and say, how do I want to express myself? Because I used to feel so stressed getting dressed to go anywhere. I used to feel like I had to put on a full face of makeup. Like there's a very Texan woman stereotype. Hair is fully done, makeup's fully done, heels, jeans, like that's the epitome of the Texan woman, which is where I was raised. And so I would feel all this pressure to present myself in a certain way. And it has been so freeing and I just remember going through the first process of that, of like, okay, because I remember one time I left the house as a teenager without makeup. And one of my friends thought I was sick. So they asked if I was sick. And that imprinted in me like, oh my God, like I can't just let my bare face be out in the world because I look like shit. And so being on that journey of deprogramming myself from that imprint, I can remember the days where I'm like forcing myself to leave the house without makeup. And it was a self-love evolution, for me. It was like, really caring so much about what others think is because I'm looking externally for approval. And it's so powerful to be on that journey of, okay, how do I connect with myself and how do I love myself? Because that love and that presence is what radiates beauty. And then you really don't care what other people think, but also they're usually not thinking anything negative about you anyways. So it's such a fun journey.
Yeah, you have been through so many different evolutions with your expression, and I've only known you for, I would say, maybe a little over a year. And
Uh-huh.
even just seeing how much you've evolved in that time, and it's really cool to see how your expression continues to evolve. And just an example of, getting out of the traditional mold of what it's supposed to look like and really coming into your authentic artistic expression in the way that feels true for you. And I imagine that feels really liberating.
It really does. It does. And even I noticed that I was a bit attached to being extreme in my style. I had a very extreme hairstyle, very, buzzed with this long braid growing from the top of my head. And I noticed, okay, actually I've become attached to being different. And so
Mm.
now I'm going to go through another ego death, another identity death, and say, yes, that was right for a time period and that felt very authentic. And now I'm going to let that go. And what is true for me right now? Right now, I want my long hair back. I'm going to go on a mission to grow my hair out. So you've been getting to watch my hair grow out. And yeah, just not being attached to what was so that I can keep staying present, because then that's also how we can show up and create most authentically. And I think that for me zooms out into a bit of a spiritual perspective of recognizing, because we are comprised of energy, pure light, pure energy, pure space, we're actually all intricately connected. And so if I'm, and I, all ancient spiritual teachings tap into presence and the power of being present. And for me, what's so important about that is when I'm present, I get to see what's truly needed in the moment, not only for myself, but for the world around me, for my family, for my friends, for my community. And so, yeah, that commitment to letting go of a past version of me, it just lends itself to being able to show up better for this present moment.
Yes, I love that. And I feel like that's something that I'm deeply devoted to. And when I think of presence, like I think of like, what is true right now?
Mm,
What feels true in this moment? And not from a mental, logical standpoint of right or wrong, should or shouldn't, but okay, what feels true and alive in my body? And we have that intuition for a reason, and when we're listening to that, we know what to do, we know who we are, we know how to show up, we know what action to take. Yeah. And this kind of brings me back full circle to what we were talking about at the beginning around clothing swaps, intentional clothing swaps, is that I feel like as I've evolved, it's like sometimes I get tired of what's in my closet because it's like, oh, that feels like an old version of myself. And there's a new version of myself that's wanting to come through and wants to be expressed in a different way. So I love having these clothing swaps. And I actually recently signed up for this company called Newly, where it's like a clothing rental company where you get to try on different styles, and you get different clothes each month to as a rental, and then you can get to see like play with different styles and different expressions and not have to be so attached to keeping everything too, which I kind of love. So
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And I would invite, listeners, like when you're getting ready to leave the house, do you ever catch yourself having that moment of wanting to put on that extra embellishment or that thing that's maybe a bit more edgy for you, and then you put it back down and you're like, no, that's too extra, or I don't know if that'll really make sense. Just in those moments, pause and actually, feel your feet on the ground and tune into your body and ask yourself, like, does this feel fun? Does it feel fun to try this new thing? And just go for it, because honestly, people really appreciate your authentic expression. And one thing I will say is, yes, sometimes it intimidates people. Sometimes people feel uncomfortable when you authentically express yourself, or when you change and they don't know how to connect with this new version of you. And that's also a part of being a visionary leader, is being okay with saying, yeah, I'm going to be misunderstood sometimes, but I am so solid in my center and knowing who I am that, yeah, I can take this risk of showing up, you know, in this outfit that I never would have worn before, or to say the thing I would have normally held back. And yeah, it is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to live into those new parts of yourself. But when I compare the discomfort, once I cross the threshold and do the big thing and make the change, if honestly it feels so relaxing in my body. Like I'm like, oh, I feel more at home. That feels great. And when I hold myself back, it's like this tight knot in my stomach that then just kind of lives there. And so, yes, there's discomfort in both paths, but one opens you up to more growth and the other one really just weighs you down.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Such a shift in our energies when we're willing to let go of the fear of judgment, when we're willing to let go of the past identities and we shed that layer like a snake skin, and then we evolve into this new version of ourselves. It's like it does feel so much lighter and so much easier than carrying around that extra weight that just is a sign of being out of alignment with our truth. So yeah, I love this conversation. I feel like we could continue talking for a really long time. We weaved so many
Could.
different pieces in. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story, pieces of your story. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your perspectives and your energy with us here today. And for our listeners who want to stay connected with you and want to keep learning from you, what's a good next step for them to take? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I would say come join me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. My handle is the Damkianna, and I'm sure you can find the spelling in the show notes. So that's where honestly I'm sharing the most updates, music that I release, events that I'm producing, offerings that I have, and you can, just DM me directly there to get in touch.
Amazing. And I know that you have your course, Cosmic Roots, and you have amazing coaching that you offer. So, yeah, get into her Instagram world and connect with her personally. And yeah, I know there's something for everyone available who's feeling called to connect with you further. So, thank you so much, my
Yeah.
love. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for everything that you do in the world. And thank you for being such an inspiration and teacher and beloved queen sister for me. I really appreciate connecting with you here in this amazing space you've created.
Love you so much.
Love you.